In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to generate Swagger documentation. And from that Swagger documentation, we're going to generate an SDK. We're just going to generate a C# SDK at the moment, but we could as easily generate a TypeScript SDK, Ruby and Java, I believe, as well. For now, we'll stick to C# because that's what we're going to use to demonstrate some other things. And we might generate the TypeScript one later for a GUI. So, first up, we're going to add Swashbuckle to our project. We actually need the Swashbuckle ASP.NET Core pack. The reason for that is we're obviously using ASP.NET Core. Now we need to add the API Explorer onto our MVC setup. This allows Swashbuckle to interrogate our API and find out what methods are available to generate that SDK. So then we're going to do .add swaggergen, and we're just going to configure it up a little bit here. The configuration options will just be things like our API name, a short description for it. We're not going to use all the options. We might just add like a license to say MIT, just to show how you configure up the information. So basically we give it a simple name. We're going to give it v1 as our name. And then the info, we're going to give it a title, which will be our API name, which will be CodePersuit, and then API. And then we will give it the version, which will be v1. And finally, we'll add that license. So we're just going to give it MIT at the moment. We're not going to give it a link to it or whatever, but we could. All this information will come out into the Swagger doc, which we'll see a little bit later. We add down here the use Swagger, and then the second thing we're going to do is the use Swagger UI. So this will give us a nice JavaScript UI that will be served up from our web server, which will link to the Swagger doc, just so we can explore that. Now, what I tend to do is turn that off in prod. I also, depending on your scenario, turn off the actual Swagger doc itself in prod, and generate that once in dev or during a set of tests, and then distribute that statically. It's up to you really what you do with that, but we'll look at turning that off later as we go further into productionizing our service. So for now, we're just going to add the endpoint, which will be swagger/v1/swagger.json, which is where we're going to output. That will be the default, and we'll just capitalize the API there. Put our semicolon on that last command, and we should be able to run. So let's go over to our browser, open up Chrome, and head over to that URL that we had for the Swagger doc. So once again, 5,000, paste in that URL, and you can see there we've got a JSON file which has been generated. Now, if we actually go to just /swagger, that UI that we talked about before will come up. And as you can see, it gives us a nice explorer for all our different methods on our controllers. You can see our different get methods here, and you can see that it has what we need to input for them and those return types that we talked about before. And finally, we can test it directly from here. So we can add a username, we can hit try it out, and it will show us the response. So that's pretty much all there is to adding a Swagger doc to our project. In the next one, we'll show how we can put a little bit more metadata in and use that metadata to produce a richer Swagger doc for our clients. Thanks for watching.